Hello, welcome back. This is quite possibly the toughest book that I've ever read. I really had to push myself through this one. I actually started reading this book for the first time in 2019. I made it about 30% through and then I kind of gave up on it. And then more recently I realised that it's a good book. So I gave it a second go and I made it like halfway through, and then with an extra push I did actually finish it. This was published in 2017 and it's published by a professor called Daniel Dennett, who I've got a lot of respect for. I like him a lot. He's good friends with Richard Dawkins, and this book is all about the evolution of minds, of human minds, and boy is it a tough book. I'm going to do my best to kind of explain the main message of the book. I'm going to be reading from notes as well because there's so much to the book. In the past, people have, well even in the present as well, but especially in the past, a lot of people like to believe that the mind was separate to the brain. They like to believe in duality or dualism, and they like to think that the mind was this kind of magical thing that was immaterial. This book puts forward an opposite argument and kind of lays that to rest. The main message of this book is basically that there's no duality. The mind is not separate from the brain. The mind is the brain. And also that the mind evolved in small steps, bit by bit, in different layers, just like organisms do in general, right? That's the main premise of the book. He starts off by mentioning Darwin's strange inversion. That strange inversion being that you can get complex beings from blind evolution. There doesn't need to be a maker. You can have complex animals. It's like a blind watchmaker, as Richard Dawkins would say. And then he goes on to something he calls Turing's strange inversion, as in Alan Turing. Back in the 1940s or 50s, Alan Turing created computers, and these computers were capable of carrying out very complex tasks, but they weren't conscious. And that in turn proved that you could have competence without comprehension. Now that phrase is huge in this book, competence without comprehension. And a big example of this that's used in the book is termite mounds. A termite mound is a very complex structure that's built by organisms that are not conscious. Termites can't comprehend what they're doing, but they get together, they follow their urges or their DNA programming, and they build termite mounds, these big complex structures. So you've got competence without comprehension. He also mentions the Manhattan Project, which was like a World War II thing where loads of people got together to build an atom bomb, but nobody knew what was going on, only the top brass knew. So that's another example of competence without comprehension. He likes to put forward this idea, I think, because it lends weight to the idea that minds evolved step by step. There wasn't just a sudden event where the lights came on. Not really like that. It's a gradual process, and a lot of animals these days are capable of competence without comprehension. Not just termites, a lot of them. Okay, and he mentioned something called free-floating rationales. There are lots of inventions that we have that came about kind of on their own. The two that he mentions are writing and money. no single human being sat down and invented writing. It came about gradually, kind of on its own, as did money. And this again lends weight to the idea that minds evolved over time. Okay, so why are we conscious now? Why do we have consciousness now? What brought it about? What spurred it on? According to Dennett, memes are the answer. If you're unfamiliar with what memes are, they are defined as culturally transmitted information. A good example is fashion. Fashion trends sweep across the world constantly. It's cultural, it's transmitted, and it's a form of information. Also, habits. Generally speaking, habits are like memes. You see a lot of memes on the internet as well. A good way to think about this is that we acquire genes at birth in our DNA, and we acquire memes throughout life after we're born and when we live our lives. And with all of these memes drifting across the countries, it kind of pushed a shift in our brain structure. Our brains changed due to memes, and that caused the lights to come on suddenly. Maybe it wasn't suddenly, I don't know this detail, but we went from being competent without comprehension, then we went on to have memes, and then those memes kind of spurred on the consciousness and awareness that we have today. Alright? That's my interpretation of the book. It's a very tough book, and I'm doing my best here, okay? So, in conclusion, minds evolved over time. It wasn't just a sudden thing, and there's no duality involved. The mind is the brain. If you're struggling to get your head around this thing about consciousness being a gradual thing, think about what it feels like to wake up in the morning. You don't just suddenly wake up and you're completely alert. You wake up and then you're very groggy, you're very disorientated, and then gradually you feel a bit more alert, a bit more clear-headed, and then you're a bit more clear-headed, and then you go up in stages and steps, and then eventually you're awake. So there are different levels to consciousness. It's not off or on, it's not black or white, it's not binary, you could say. There are different levels to consciousness, and there are different levels of awareness. A last point he makes, and I need to include this. Consciousness is very deceptive. When you look at a person and you look into their eyes and you can see that they're conscious, you can see that they're awake. It's quite deceptive because it looks magical. You think about consciousness and you think, oh, okay, I understand how bodies could have evolved from matter, but there's no way that consciousness could have evolved. But it's deceptive. And he likens it to an app on a smartphone. When you look at an app, you see a colourful square icon. And you look at that and you think that's what an app looks like. But it's nothing what an app looks like. Underneath the surface of your screen, the app itself is like a string of data, a string of digital numbers. It looks nothing like a colourful square icon. And so that's what consciousness is like. We see awareness and the lights being on in somebody's head, but underneath the eyes, or consciousness itself, is probably just the result of loads and loads of electrical activity firing across the brain. All of that activity kind of causes the lights to come on. I hope that made sense, okay? I really hope it did. It's a very, very tough book, and I actually wouldn't recommend reading it unless you're really into this topic, or if you're really into Daniel Dennett. It's not very accessible, and I think the book has been written for professors to read, not the average layman. Okay, but I hope I've kind of given you a good idea of what the book contains there. I can't say I enjoyed reading it, but on the other hand, I'm glad I did, because I've now got some new knowledge. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Remember, I've got a range of free books that you can check out on Amazon. Yes, I will plug my own books. I've got to raise awareness somehow, haven't I? I've left links for my books below. What else? I'll be back in about 2 weeks or so with another book review. In the meantime, try to have a great day on this illusional, conscious, chaotic rock we call Earth. Goodbye.